Hi everybody, this is Saad for the Sad Truth. Some of you may remember an earlier clip of mine, the Sad Truth number 59, titled The All-Time Greatest Social Justice Warriors, wherein I discussed some of the demands that had been made by some Dartmouth College students when they stormed the president's office. This was uh, an activist action called the Freedom Budget. And it was absolute lunacy. I would really encourage you to go back and listen to that clip and get your hands on the actual document from the Dartmouth students. As I said, known as the Freedom Budget, because you will see what it means to have a generation of students parasitized by all sorts of nonsense. In any case, I should also mention that at one point I was a visiting professor at Dartmouth College at the Tuck School of Business. But in any case, today I wanted to discuss yet another manifestation of this type of so-called activism by angry, indignant students fighting for their rights and the rights of the oppressed. And this comes to us from Salem College. I access the story via Inside Higher Ed. I'll put the link to the story at the bottom of the YouTube clip. And in that particular article, they provided a link to a 10-page document. This was on a student's Facebook page where she had actually listed the document, the 10-page document, and I actually downloaded it so that I could analyze it. And so what I'd like to do today is read for you some of the most astonishing demands and passages from this call to action. All right, here we go. So now I'm reading verbatim. All members of the board, they're referring to the Board of Trustees here, so all members of the board are required to have a minimum of 16 hours of diversity training every year to be completed prior to the first board meeting. At each Board of Trustees meeting, there will be a minimum of 2 hours set aside to continue diversity training. This training will include intersectional diversity training and can be done with the chair of the Office of Diversity and Inclusiveness or through approved outside sources that are vetted by the chair of the Office of Diversity and Inclusiveness. Individuals who do not complete this training will be held accountable and have their positions reviewed by the chair of the Board of Trustees, the president of the college, and an appointed individual from the Office of Diversity and Inclusiveness, who is appointed by the chair of the Office of Diversity and Inclusiveness for possible disciplinary action or dismissal. So show up for your brainwashing session, you immoral pig, otherwise you will be fired. But of course, this is all done in the name of freedom and inclusion and diversity. Incidentally, I won't repeat roughly the same passage for a whole bunch of other groups that were required, according to the students, to take this diversity training. These include, so the same demands were made of the following groups. Number one, administration. So not only the Board of Trustees, but anybody who is serving in the administration has to go through the exact same set of requirements that were described in the passage that I read for you. Faculty have to go through it. Anybody who works in health and counseling services, anybody in the general staff, and the alumni board and the board of visitors. So anybody who in any way is linked to Salem College must go to 16 hours of diversity training and all the other nonsense that I read in the passage. I mean, again, I'd ask you to stop for a moment and think. If I were satirizing this, you would have a hard time believing it. If I were doing a satire of how people were brainwashed in gulags using all sorts of language like the chair of inclusive thinking and the chair of proper polite thinking, you would think that this is just a joke. It's not. There is a bunch of students at endless number of colleges who actually have had their brains sufficiently parasitized by these unbelievably grotesque ideas that they find it totally within their purview and their rights to actually ask these things with a straight face. But let's go on. Oh yes, this is a good one. As a women's college, I haven't mentioned yet that Salem College is a all-women's college. So as a women's college, faculty will present their subjects to encompass intersectional women's history. Congruently, faculty will present their subjects with lenses and content reflecting non-Western perspectives and the history of people of color as well. This is not satire. I'm not making this up. I'm not trying to make you laugh. This is actual students demanding this. So let's suppose I am a professor at Salem College. So I teach consumer psychology, psychology of decision making, evolutionary psychology, evolutionary consumption. So now I would have to incorporate intersectional women's history, and I would have to present my subject matters with a lens and content reflecting non-Western perspectives and the history of people of color as well. If I were not to do that, well, then I might have to be sent to Gulag 13 for inclusiveness and diversity training. Let's go on with another demand. The proportion of people of color that are on the board of trustees will reflect the proportion of current Salem College and Academy students that are students of color. And nominating and appointing individuals to serve on the board of trustees, preference will be given to alumni of color. I like it. But this is not in any way racist, because remember, only whites can be racist. People of color are noble creatures. The proportion of people of color that are on administration will reflect the proportion of current Salem College students that are students of color. And in both of these last two demands, they refer to some chart that refers to the racial and demographic breakdown, or the racial breakdown of the student body. Let's go on. The Health and Counseling Services Department will be representative of students on this campus in the areas of race, gender identity and expression, sexuality, class, ability, etc. There will always be at least one intern who is a person of color and at least one intern who identifies as LGBTQ+. So for example, if you suffer from schizophrenia and you need to go to the health and counseling services, well, I mean, you need, if you are a person, say, who is gay, then it would have to be that there has to be an LGBTQ+ person taking care of you. That's only fair. There will be accurate representation of the Salem student population in the admissions literature sent out to prospective students. This is across all senses of intersectionality, race/ethnicity, now listen to the next one, including not giving preference to lighter skinned people of color. So it's not just a matter of people of color and white people. You could be a person of color, but you are a lighter skinned person of color. Then we have to take that into the demographic realities. And other intersectionality measures that we have to look into are gender, sexual identity, class, ability, etc. Let's go on. Other demand. Administration will follow through with their commitment to embrace diversity and will actively address any current political, local, and/or national unrest and divisiveness, such as the 2016 presidential election, House Bill 2, national and international social justice protests and/or violations of rights, etc., in a timely manner, preferably by the week following the event. So the students are demanding of the university administration to address issues, national and international news or local news that somehow they deem as being relevant to their social justice warrior issues. And if they don't, then they are in violation of that objective. The statements and actions made at these times will state in direct terms what the school does and does not stand for or condone, such as hate speech, divisive and offensive symbols, threats or actual violations of personal safety, etc. So again, the administration should always be on top of the news so that anytime something happens, it could be in the Ukraine, it could be in Kamchatka, it could be in Namibia, it could be right down the street, they have to address all of these events that are happening around the world in a way that demonstrates that they are committed to diversity and inclusiveness. Otherwise, they're in violation of that objective, in which case, off to Gulag 13 you go. In an effort to avoid a conflict of interest, instate a policy that allows students to submit complaints about a faculty member, including professors with tenure and adjunct professors, to any member of Committee on Community. While working towards establishing a permanent human resource department, the Committee on Community will serve in this capacity. Repercussions will match the severity of the transgression and can be in the form of, now you have to hear this, I wish that I were making this up. I wish that this were Gad satire. It's not. So A, mandatory individual diversity training. So if you are found of having committed some transgression, and the transgression of course could be anything, number one, you have to go to mandatory individual diversity training. Number two, a written apology to the student whom they've offended and or the entire school at the discretion of the offended party. So remember, now we have, actions that if they lead to offense, you're guilty. An element of community involvement / service that directly relates to the offended group. D, suspension / termination of employment. If you offend me enough, then I fire you, and it doesn't matter if you are tenured. This is the result of 2 violations over a 5-year period, or if otherwise decided upon by Committee on Community. So imagine my teaching an evolutionary psychology course. Someone is not happy that I didn't mention transgenderism in the course. They are offended. They file a grievance against me. 2 of these grievances, and it's bye-bye tenure. You're fired, Jew boy. Let's go on with another, demand for dignity, inclusiveness, and diversity. So, to preserve the integrity of the education that is received at Salem College, faculty will be made accountable to comments made on faculty / course review surveys conducted at the end of the semester. So, of course, when we submit our dossiers for evaluation, say for example for promotion or for salary increase, we submit our teaching dossier. But what does it mean to be held accountable, right? Sometimes students write the most unbelievably offensive things, speaking of offense, in their teaching evaluations. There's no way for you to cross-examine them. There's no way for you to defend yourself as a professor. There's no way for you to know who said this thing, right? So somebody could say, Professor John Smith is a bigot because he spoke about XYZ. Well, you're going to be held accountable to that. Let's go on. Faculty members will be held accountable for, wait for it, microaggressions, as well as with the appropriate repercussions. Of course, anything is a microaggression, so it is almost impossible to show up to the university campus without you being found guilty of original sin. Forgive the pun. The Salem Signature first-year courses will include an intensive period of diversity training during their first semester here, lasting a minimum of 8 contact hours by a certified instructor. So a certified instructor who's been taught on all the social justice warrior mumbo jumbo will teach all students who come to the school how to properly think, how to properly speak, which thoughts are appropriate, which are not. And that it doesn't matter whether you're studying neuroscience or mathematics or women's studies, you would have to go through this program. Another requirement, the proportion of people of color that are faculty members will reflect the proportion of current Salem College students that are students of color. Show me those skin hues, math department. I don't see enough skin color that's dark. It's time to get rid of you, John Smith, white boy. We need more math professors of color. this definitely adheres nicely to Martin Luther King's famous wish that people should be judged on their individual merits and their individual characters. Boy, is he turning in his grave. In the end of semester professor evaluations, questions will be added asking about the professor's inclusion of the diversity in their class, i.e., questions about multicultural and multi-religious perspectives, facilitation of diverse class discourse, addressing social and campus climate, measuring students' mental and emotional wellness, etc. I mean, this is breathtaking. So I'm teaching a course in psychology of decision making in the business school. I should incorporate a multicultural and multi-religious perspective, and I should also gauge the students' mental and emotional wellness, especially if they are part of a marginalized and disenfranchised group. Otherwise, I would be in violation of these edicts. When a professor is up for tenure, this is fantastic. The senior student with the highest GPA in the professor's major will serve on the tenure board and have a voice in the decision of whether or not the professor will receive tenure. So the tenure decision is, one of the most important decisions that is done in academia. This is when a university, and oftentimes the discipline at large, evaluates the dossier of the professor in question to see whether that professor has contributed enough to knowledge, to science, to academic thought, to the pantheon of knowledge, that he or she is worthy of receiving the protection afforded by tenure. Well, now an undergraduate student would be part of that process. It is breathtaking. Let's go on. Salem College will institute an inclusion policy that reflects this gender policy at Wellesley College. Oh yeah, Wellesley College. Remember, 2014, I delivered an invited lecture at Wellesley College, and that's actually the first time, I think, on record that someone in academia spoke about the gender pronoun issue. If you remember, after I delivered my lecture, a student and I were engaged in a very lengthy debate wherein she was arguing that it is perfectly reasonable for me to have to poll the students at the start of class as to their gender identity, and so that I could address them appropriately. And my thinking was, I mean, are you crazy? Are you insane? I'm going to sit at the start of every class and poll people as to what their gender identities are. And of course, a few years later, this situation became that much more famous with the Jordan Peterson situation. But in any case, let's go on. So this is the Wellesley gender policy. Wellesley will consider for admission any applicant who lives as a woman and consistently identifies as a woman. Therefore, candidates assigned male at birth who identify as women are eligible to apply for admission. The college also accepts applications from those who were assigned female at birth, identify as non-binary, and who feel they belong in our community of women. So remember, Wellesley College is also an all-women's college, just like Salem College. And so if you are a man, if you are biologically a man, you were born a man, but you identify as a woman, then you could now attend these all-women's colleges. I'd be curious to see what happens in very intimate situations that are likely to occur when you have same-sex, I don't know, dorms and showers and so on. But in any case, let's go on. Here's another one, gender policy. As part of the diversity of the Salem community, includes students, faculties, and staff who have serious gender identities. A, Salem College will assign email addresses based on preferred rather than legal name. Salem College students will be allowed to update their ID cards with preferred names free of charge. The mailroom will use preferred names and ID numbers to distribute mail. So, for example, if your legal name is John Smith, but you don't want to go by that name, then we're now going to create a whole new system to cater to the fact that you might not want to be called John Smith. You might want to be called Lady Gaga. B, Salem College will use gender-neutral language in all official correspondence and require employees of the institutions to do so as well. paging Dr. Jordan Peterson, i.e. Salem siblings instead of Salem sisters, right? Salem sisters is gendered, that's bad. Salem siblings is more inclusive. Any employee of the college who refuses to follow this policy shall be reported to Honor Council, and the appropriate disciplinary action will be taken. This is not a joke, people. This is real. This is at a real university or college. Let's go on. Salem College will provide gender-neutral housing similar to the open housing program offered at Bernard College. So, and here's their program at Bernard College. Bernard Residential Life and Housing is pleased to take part at Columbia's open housing program in order to allow students to choose into suites or rooms together regardless of gender identity. The primary reason for such a policy is to provide housing options that take into consideration varying identities and preferences, and to ensure a comfortable and welcoming environment for all students. And then there is the link to that particular policy at Bernard College that's provided. So there you have it. And then they end with this very ominous passage. You've had your chance to ignore this, but now it's in your face. Pay attention. It's past time you take steps to implement the rights, policies, and demands necessary to alleviate the inequity and discrimination that permeate every facet of Salem College. This call to action demands policies that should have been instated, strange word, since the founding of Salem. Salem does not stand for diversity and inclusiveness, and will not until each of these policies is instated. Do they mean instituted? Not sure. It's time you act and stand for an equitable and intersectional Salem. There is no alternative. So there you have it, folks. This is the world that we live in. This is why I'm taking the time and I'm committing the effort to go and testify in front of the Canadian Parliament on Bill C-16, which is only a small part of this larger collective lunacy that has infected the minds of the current generation of students. And of course, those students eventually become the political leaders of the future. In some cases, these political leaders have already hatched. They're called Justin Trudeau et al. And we, in so doing, in supporting, or at least in being quiet in the face of this type of lunacy, we allow these movements to take greater space in the public discourse, and ultimately, slowly our freedoms, slowly our commitment to reason, our commitment to science, our commitment to logic are eaten away. So we all have a voice. Stand up, mock this, ridicule it, criticize it, reject it, speak your mind before you're sent away to Gulag 13. Take care. Ciao.